The North Atlantic, March 1943, Convoy HX-229 crept through fog and freezing sleet, 40 merchant ships bound for Liverpool, loaded with food, fuel, and ammunition. Above, the sky was empty. Below, death stalked silently. 20 German U-boats, the infamous Wolfpack Raubgraf, waited, in the cramped radio room of the escort ship HMS Hesperus. Petty Officer William Bill Carter hunched over his transmitter. His hands trembled, not from fear but from cold. Every message, every ping of Morse code, carried life or death. And on that day, his key, a small brass switch used to send signals, jammed. When Carter pressed down, the key stuck halfway. The tone that followed wasn't a dot or dash. It was a screech. The sound tore through the frequency like a banshee. He cursed and smacked the side of the unit, but the noise didn't stop. At that very moment, across the ocean, hidden under grey waves, German U-boat operators froze. Their receivers filled with static, deafening, continuous interference. The Wolfpack's radio net, the heartbeat of their coordination, went dark. Carter didn't know it yet, but that broken key had just jammed every U-boat for hundreds of miles. He leaned closer to the headset, sweat freezing on his brow. The crew thought it was just a malfunction. But something strange was happening. The U-boats, once whispering in deadly unison, began to drift out of sync. Their captains barked orders no one could hear. For the first time in months, the Atlantic went silent, and that silence would save thousands of lives. For nearly 10 minutes, Carter stared at the radio as the piercing tone screamed through the headphones. The chief communications officer rushed in, ready to scold him, until he froze. The sonar operators were shouting, "U-boat echoes. Fading. They're breaking off." At first, they thought it was a glitch. But then, escort ships began reporting the same thing. The enemy Wolfpack had fallen silent. No orders, no chatter, nothing. Carter's broken key was flooding the German frequency with a continuous carrier wave, a wall of static strong enough to drown out their coordination. What had been a malfunction had become a weapon. The chief gave the only logical order: keep it pressed. For hours, the Hesperus transmitter roared into the night, its single note echoing across the North Atlantic. Other convoy ships reverted to lamps and flags, steering silently while Carter's accidental jammer blinded the enemy. Below the waves, chaos spread. U-boat commanders argued over failed transmissions, their bearings lost. Some fired at phantom pings, others dove too deep and vanished. Admiral Donnett's command center, desperate for updates, received nothing but ghost signals. By dawn, when Carter finally released the switch, the convoy was safe. 37 merchant ships, 5,000 lives, had survived the night. The radio room was filled with exhausted silence. Carter looked at his trembling hand, still marked by the pressure of the key. He hadn't fought with a gun or a torpedo. But his mistake had done what no escort destroyer could. It had jammed an entire Wolfpack. London intelligence soon intercepted the report. Their analysts sent a short, urgent telegram: convoy saved by unknown radio interference. Immediate investigation required. The man with the broken key had unknowingly invented a new weapon, one that would soon change the war's entire course. When the convoy finally limped into Liverpool, its hulls battered but intact, word of the miracle spread faster than the ships could unload. Admiralty officers met Hesperus at the dock. Carter, still smelling of oil and salt, was ordered to pack his radio gear and report to London immediately. 2 days later, he found himself in a windowless basement at the Royal Naval Signals Establishment in Portsmouth. Engineers and intelligence officers circled around his transmitter, now treated like a relic. "You're telling us this noise, this jam, was accidental?" One officer asked. "Aye, sir." "The key jammed halfway," Carter replied. "I just held it down." They stared at each other, realizing what that meant. If a single radio operator could disrupt an entire Wolfpack, what could a coordinated effort do? Over the next week, technicians recreated the malfunction, wiring resistors and coils in strange patterns, trying to reproduce the frequency anomaly. They soon discovered that the signal didn't just interfere, it overloaded the German U-boat receivers, flooding their circuits with meaningless bursts of sound. The very technology that gave the U-boats their coordination had a weakness: it could be deafened. Carter watched the experiments in awe. Men in lab coats turned his accident into science. They called it continuous wave disruption. For the first time, Britain could fight back not with depth charges, but with silence and static. In a memo marked Top Secret, an admiral wrote, "The Carter effect shows the potential of radio frequency warfare. Recommend immediate field trials." Within days, prototype jam transmitters were installed on escort ships heading for the North Atlantic. Each one could mimic Carter's broken key, deliberately flooding enemy frequencies. The Germans didn't know it yet, but the invisible battlefield of sound had just been born. April 1943. The North Atlantic was cruel and grey, waves tall enough to bury a destroyer's bow. On board HMS Viscount, a small group of signalmen huddled around a strange black box bolted to the wall. It had one red switch, one dial, and no label, only a tag that read experimental equipment, property of the Admiralty. Among them was William Carter, now promoted and reassigned to oversee the test. The crew called him the man who silenced the sea. But to Carter, it didn't feel like glory. It felt like pressure, because this time, failure meant real deaths. The convoy they escorted, HX-234, had already been spotted by German reconnaissance. Reports said a Wolfpack was forming. 15 U-boats, maybe more. The Viscount's captain turned to Carter. "Once they're close enough to strike, we try your trick. Until then, we stay quiet." By midnight, sonar pings echoed through the hull. "Contact bearing 240. Someone shouted. Depth charges were loaded. The crew braced. Then, Carter flipped the red switch. A low hum filled the room, steady, almost soothing. But over the headphones, it became a roar of static that blanketed every known U-boat frequency. Carter watched the meters spike as the transmitter pulsed raw power into the ether. Minutes later, the sonar officer reported confusion below. "They're changing course, sir, no coordination." "It's working." The Wolfpack broke apart. Submarines surfaced miles away from each other, unable to communicate. Their encrypted signals dissolved into white noise. One U-boat, blinded and desperate, fired torpedoes at another in the chaos. Carter sat frozen, listening to the chaos he'd created. "They're deaf," the captain whispered. "You've cut their ears off." The convoy moved safely through the night. Not a single merchant ship was lost. When they reached port, London sent a simple cable to Viscount. "Device effective. Continue operation." Name: Project Screamer. By May 1943, panic began to ripple through the Kriegsmarine. Reports from U-boat captains filled Admiral Donnett's desk. Entire Wolfpacks were losing contact mid-attack. Their radios screamed with static, powerful, endless, impossible to tune out. At first, engineers blamed faulty wiring or sunspots. But soon, they noticed a pattern. The noise always appeared near Allied convoys, and always when the submarines closed in. One U-boat commander wrote bitterly, "It's as if the ocean itself howls when we attack." Donitz ordered an emergency investigation. Radio specialists in Brest and Street-Nazaire set up listening posts, trying to locate the interference. But every attempt failed. The signal had no single source, only an expanding cloud of distortion drifting across the Atlantic. Among the crews, whispers spread. They called it der unsichtbare Feind, the invisible enemy. Meanwhile, in Portsmouth, Carter was recalled to headquarters. The Admiralty was ready to expand Project Screamer. In the operations room, he saw maps dotted with red lines, each marking a convoy now equipped with the device. "We're no longer hiding from Wolfpacks," said Commander Blake. "We're hunting them." Carter frowned. "Sir, we still don't know what it does to their systems." Blake smiled. "That's the point, son. They don't either." Unaware to both men, German scientists were already building a countermeasure, a filter to block the mysterious signal. But before they could test it, another convoy, HX-241, crossed the ocean with 2 screamers on board. That night, German listening posts went silent for 9 straight hours. The Atlantic had changed forever. The sea had learned to speak, and its voice was white noise. By June 1943, German naval intelligence could no longer ignore the mystery. The once feared Wolfpacks were being torn apart by something invisible, not depth charges, not aircraft, but a sound that turned the sea itself into chaos. The Kriegsmarine called an emergency summit in Paris, bringing together their best cryptologists, engineers, and radio specialists. At the center of the meeting stood Colonel Heinrich Fahlmann, head of signals research. He slammed a folder onto the table filled with intercepted recordings, shrill bursts of static and strange oscillations. "This," he said, "is not nature. This is design." They began triangulating Allied transmissions, trying to catch the screaming frequency. Submarines were ordered to stay submerged longer, surfacing only in radio silence. But the interference seemed to follow them, even in mid-Atlantic. It wasn't just powerful, it was mobile. To hunt it, Germany launched Operation Donakiel II, a covert effort to locate and capture a British ship carrying the mysterious device. Intelligence hinted that convoys using it sailed from Halifax under heavy escort. Meanwhile, aboard HMS Aberdeen, Carter and a small team installed the newest Screamer Mk2. Unlike his old malfunctioning key, this version could shift frequencies mid-broadcast, creating a sweeping pulse that jammed even wider bands. One night, as the convoy crossed the Greenland Gap, a message reached them: "Be advised, German interception vessel sighted. Possible counterjamming attempt." For the first time, Carter realized the enemy was listening back. The next hours became a deadly duel of invisible weapons, both sides sending storms of radio noise across the same sky, each trying to blind the other. Somewhere in the static, history's first electronic battle had begun. The North Atlantic glimmered faintly under cold auroras as HMS Aberdeen prepared for another night of escort duty. Inside the radio room, Carter watched the Screamer Mk2 hum to life. Its pulse filled the air, steady, powerful, unstoppable. Then, a new sound pierced through the static, a rhythmic tone, deliberate and sharp. "Sir, someone's jamming us back," the operator whispered. Carter's eyes widened. For the first time, the enemy had found the Screamer's frequency. Somewhere below the waves, German U-boats were fighting back with their own kind of noise. He shifted frequencies, but the pulse followed. It wasn't random interference, it was a counterattack. Miles away, aboard U-556, a German engineer grinned as his new signal mirror reflected the Screamer's broadcast right back. The idea was simple: invert the British frequency and amplify it. Within minutes, Aberdeen's communications began to collapse. Radar blinked. Messages turned to gibberish. The Screamer had met its echo. "They're turning our signal against us." Carter shouted. The captain barked. "Can you stop it?" Carter hesitated. "Maybe not stop it. But we can change it." He remembered how it all began: a broken Morse key, chaotic static. That imperfection had been the secret. Predictable waves could be mirrored, random noise could not. Grabbing a screwdriver, he cracked open the transmitter and twisted the copper coils by hand. Sparks flashed. The clean tone shattered into wild bursts, uneven, alive. The Germans tried to reflect it, but their receivers couldn't handle the chaos. Circuits overheated. U-556 system went dark. On Aberdeen, the pulse stopped. The room was silent again. Carter leaned back, exhausted. "Let's see them mirror that," he muttered. The first true radio duel of the Atlantic was over, and chaos had won. When HMS Aberdeen reached Liverpool, Carter expected another debriefing, but this time, the reception was different. 2 intelligence officers escorted him straight to London. He was led not to a naval base, but to a sprawling research complex hidden beneath Bletchley Park. Inside, a small group of scientists and engineers surrounded him, eager to hear every detail of the radio duel. "You improvised a random frequency pattern manually?" one asked in disbelief. "I," Carter replied, still exhausted. "It wasn't planned, just chaos." The lead engineer smiled. "Then chaos, Mr. Carter, is exactly what we need." From that moment, Project Screamer evolved. Teams of mathematicians began mapping unpredictable frequency shifts, the first attempt at electronic countermeasures. They discovered that randomization, once seen as error, could actually make a signal untouchable. Carter was ordered to stay on as a consultant. His small, improvised idea was becoming a doctrine. Within weeks, the Royal Navy created a new division, NEDS, the Naval Electronic Disruption Section. Its mission was simple but revolutionary: fight wars through invisible waves. Meanwhile, German intercept stations began reporting strange, fluctuating bursts over multiple bands. No 2 signals were the same. They called it ghost static. It crippled coordination, jammed encrypted orders, and even confused radar pings. The British press never mentioned it. The public knew nothing. But in secret reports sent to Churchill's War Cabinet, one sentence stood out: "Project Screamer is proving more effective than depth charges. The enemy cannot fight what he cannot hear." Carter often stood outside the bunker at night, listening to the faint hum of transmitters in the distance. He realized this war was changing, shifting from steel and gunpowder to electricity and math. For the first time in history, victory depended not on who fired first, but who spoke last in the static. By August 1943, German command had reached desperation. Convoy attacks failed, and U-boat radios were filled with endless static. Admiral Donitz gave a final order: capture the British jamming device, at any cost. A new mission was born, Operation Sea Serpent. Submarine U-867 was chosen for the task. On board were engineers, cryptographers, and a physicist from Kiel. Their target, HMS Endurance, an escort ship rumored to carry the latest Screamer Mk3. For 2 nights, U-867 stalked the convoy through mist and waves. In the radio compartment, German technicians traced the faint pulse of the jammer. "We have it, Herr Kapitän." Bearing east. Reinhard ordered the attack. The U-boat surfaced under darkness, ready to disable the ship. On Endurance, Carter watched the radar flicker. He understood the enemy wasn't after the convoy. They were after him. "Can you block their trace?" The captain shouted. "No," Carter replied. "But I can drown it." He turned the Screamer's dial to maximum power. The entire ship trembled as electricity poured into the transmitter. The ocean erupted with static, a blinding roar across every band. Below, U-867's instruments failed. Consoles sparked, dials shattered. The submarine's lights died as the sound overwhelmed every circuit. Within minutes, it sank beneath the waves, crushed by its own pursuit. Silence returned to the sea. The convoy moved on untouched. Weeks later, in London, Carter stood before a small panel of officers. One spoke quietly. "Petty Officer Carter, your invention ended a battle no one ever saw." Carter simply nodded. For him, the war had found a new language, not of explosions, but of static, and the ocean, at last, was quiet.